Welcome again to the RSE seminars this term. So this week we've got Oscar Seip from the Software Sustainability Institute. For those of you who might not be so familiar, the Software Sustainability Institute is sort of a government funded program that is sort of strongly backing the RSE Society and championing the careers of research software engineering. But runs sort of a lot of activities in the space. Specifically, Oscar is the research community manager at the SSI, and something I know is in charge of the fellowship program that runs on an annual basis there. So his background is within languages and arts, humanities, digital humanities. And so with that, please do welcome Oscar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Oscar. Thank you very much for the invitation, Jack. Thanks everyone for joining today in the room and online. As Jack said, my name is Oscar. I'm Research Community Manager at the Software Sustainability Institute, and I basically manage their fellowship program. So that is the thing that I consume it most, and that means looking after the current fellows. So every year we select a cohort of fellows between 25, around 25, and looking after our entire fellow community, which adds up to about 250 now. And we're in the middle of selection processes. So it's a busy time, but it's great. We just did the shortlisting on Monday. It's very, it was very difficult this year, but no, so that's the main thing I'm looking at. If at this point, at any point after this talk, you want to contact me, you can have my email address there. It's Oscar Seip at Manchester.ac.uk. I'm also Oscar Seip on most social media platforms, so you can find me there. The slides are available on Zenodo, and including links as well. So I originally didn't include this slide, but just from a question I had before this presentation, I thought it might be useful to include here. And Jack sort of alluded to it briefly. Just a little bit about my background, how I came into this role, what am I doing, what my interests are. So originally from the Netherlands, been in the UK for over 10 years now, so it's been quite a while. But I studied theatre studies and art and performance studies at the University of Amsterdam, then studied early modern cultural and intellectual and cultural history in London at the Warburg Institute. And over the time, I started to use more and more sort of technology in my research. And I became also more interested in the general role of technology in research, and technology very broadly defined as tools and software and code and things like that. And that continued, that interest continued throughout some postdocs I did in research projects in the Netherlands, UK, Italy, and Germany. And I convened some seminars on the role of correspondence in research, on the role of the digital turn. And this was all sort of happening in the context of pre-AI, but during the time of COVID, because one of my postdocs was at the Biblioteca Nazione in Rome. I was studying there, we're going there to look at early modern printed books. COVID happens and all the libraries closed. So that, you know, I became very reliant on digitized manuscripts, digitized early printed books. And that sort of started off a conversation about the impact of that and how that transforms research. So that's very briefly my background. And at that point, one thing that might be useful here as well is I was an early career researcher. And one of those early career researchers who starts off with an Excel sheet. I wanted to, you know, compile a database of all books, of early printed books, start off an Excel sheet, and at some point that turns into something bigger and you need a database for that. But I was an early career researcher moving between institutions, so I couldn't really work with RSEs, I couldn't really work with central university resources, so I had to sort of do it myself. So that's when I embarked in a sort of evening course, full stack developer course, and I was on the path to sort of looking into an RSE career path as something I wanted to do when my current role came up. So in this, my current role, I work with software engineers, I work with researchers, and the whole community to promote best practices in computational methods in research. And that's very broad. It contains it covers EDIA concerns to responsible computational and sustainable practices. What I want to talk about today is the question of how do we advance digital research in the arts and the humanities. And the context of that is that the development of digital tools and methods has transformed research in the arts and humanities. And that has created new demand for connected communities of practice, greater capacity in digital skills and RSE expertise, and also more coordinated interdisciplinary collaboration across the research landscape. As I mentioned, the Software Sustainability Institute was founded in 2010 as the first organization in the world dedicated to the role of software in research. And the SSI addresses the needs that I just mentioned by empowering individuals and communities, building capacity through targeted training and skill development, and fostering collaboration to advance digital research in the arts and humanities. Jack briefly mentioned the SSI, and just a show of hands, who has heard of the SSI or Software Sustainability? That's good. That's great. But just a quick overview of what the SSI does. So the SSI consists of 5 teams. I sit in the community team there in the top left. The community team supports, establishes and maintains communities of practice, connecting the right people to address key issues in research software community. Then there's the training and software team, focuses on developing reliable, reproducible and reusable software and delivering essential training to researchers. Then there's a policy and research team as well, and they gather evidence to promote the role of software in research and shares insights with stakeholders to shape policy. A lot of the things we do there is also around EDIA and inclusive RSE. We have in Manchester Anita Banerjee, who works very hard on that. And then there's the events team, which brings the community together through events like the collaboration workshop and research software camps. And these are really about knowledge exchange and collaboration. I'll talk a little bit more about those two later. And then at the center of all of that is our communications team. And that uses our platform to enable engagement, delivery, uptake of our activities, and amplifying the good work of others. I stress that last bit. So you don't need to be a fellow, you don't need to be officially affiliated with the SSI for us to promote your events. If you're doing anything in the space of research software that you would like us to promote, please feel free to contact me. I'm always happy to promote that. Then, very briefly, the research software camps, they are about to start next week. The research software camps this year focus is careers and skills in research software. It's a free event. You can sign up via Eventbrite, and there are a lot of workshops on various topics from 10th to 20th November. I participated in one workshop on outreach, but there's lots of other things. I urge you to have a look, because as I said, it's online, it's free, and registration is via Eventbrite. The other thing I just wanted to plug, and apologies for the plugging, but it is hopefully relevant for a lot of people. It's CW26, and that will focus on the central theme and purpose of strengthening the research software community. This will take place 28 to 30 April at the ICC in Belfast. It's a hybrid event, and registration is also via Eventbrite. The current call for mini workshop is out, and there's also a call for people to be on the judging panel for the Hack Day. One thing about the collaboration workshop, it's a so-called unconference. So that means it's not a conference where you sit and listen and there are talks like you're doing today, and hopefully we'll get a bit of interaction, but it's a very active, interactive, collaborative event where a lot of great things are born and thought of, including the concept of RSE as developed as or conceived of as one of these collaborations workshop. So who knows what we'll come up with this year. Then very briefly, I wouldn't be, would be a shame if I didn't mention the fellowship program since I'm running it. We're in the middle of selection now, but there is another round in August for the fellowship program. And just as a quick reminder for people who are interested, the fellowship program consists of a few elements. Financial support, so you get £4,000 to organise or participate in workshops, events, training and conferences. And fellows beyond the inaugural year, they can apply for the development fund, further development fund. There's a mentorship element where you can work with a professionally trained mentor to increase the impact of your plans, navigate career paths and develop leadership skills. There's engagement with the SSI community and its events. So as I mentioned, the SSI fellow community is now 250 large, and that doesn't include close collaborators and staff. And there are monthly or fellows calls, study groups, Slack discussions, and then annual collaboration workshop and software camps. Last year, we also experimented a bit with cohort-based learning. Specifically, we offered some courses in community building, how to run an inclusive event, how to do a survey, and other things like that. And we are planning to expand on that next year as well. Some examples of 2025 fellows' work in the arts and humanities. I just wanted to highlight in the context of this talk, and I'll refer later to them. First, we have here Gokwe from the University of Warwick, who's establishing a community of digital humanities RSEs in the Midlands. We have Milena Dobreva from the University of Glasgow, who is building a community practice focused on collections as data. Then we have Nikki Nicholson from Kew Gardens, creating a community of practice around digital specimen data, and Phil Reed from the University of Manchester, expanding the RSE competency toolkit for digital humanities in galleries, libraries, archives, museum sectors. These are some of the plans and the people in our current cohort. If you are interested in learning what these people do, or you want to work with them, please contact me and I'll get you in touch with them. And at the bottom also, there is a link there to the description of all the fellows from that cohort. And keep an eye on who's coming in the next fellowship cohort. Something else that the Software Sustainability Institute does, and this sits within the policy and research team. I'm defining this as various sort of separate teams, but within the SSI staff, we obviously work together on a few things. And I am involved in policy research side as well. Actually, this one here, Sustaining the UK Digital Humanities Landscape, I contributed to as a PhD student way before I joined the SSI. I had no idea what I was doing there, but was very happy to be part of that. But then I was still a PhD student at the John Rylands Library in Manchester. Since then, there's been other reports. So other reports here for the ASRC, commissioned by the ASRC. And it's just an illustration of how the SSI is working with funders, informing policy, is shaping policy. And this is not just staff, but fellows as well who contribute and input into these reports. Again, if you are interested in some of this work, please let me know, and it's ongoing. But today I wanted to focus on one of the most recent reports that we've contributed to. That's both myself and the director, Neil Chuan. On this report from the Data Culture Group at the Alan Turing Institute, and it is called Towards the National Research Software Engineering Capability, the Arts and Humanities Research, a roadmap. It was published this year. The hope was that it would be followed by investment, and that conversation is still ongoing. But we are looking and are in active conversation with both the AHRC and the wider arts and humanities community, the research software engineering community, to see where we can implement parts of this roadmap. So before I continue to talk, again, if you are interested in joining these efforts, we are currently, the SSI plays a sort of coordinating role in that as well, with the authors of the roadmap. And we're expanding this to the wider community. If you are interested in joining that conversation, maybe feeding into what can be done here locally at Cambridge, please contact me and we'll contact you, we'll involve you in those conversations. But I just wanted to give a quick introduction to the roadmap, and then there's some time for feedback, and then we'll talk some more. So the problem that this roadmap really is trying to address is that the growing use of digital methods in the arts and humanities research offers major opportunities, but also challenges. As projects increasingly rely on software development, data analysis, visualization, and AI, the need for skilled research software engineers has become critical. However, RSEs are scarce, unevenly distributed, and often lack arts and humanities training, specific training, leaving many researchers without technical collaboration needed to fully harness digital innovation. There are a few reasons for that that we can discuss, but this is the main problem that that roadmap is trying to highlight. To find an answer to this problem, or to explore this problem, we started off with a stakeholder group, started with 26 members. That quickly turned into 40 authors with a range of skills and expertise. And over the course of 3 workshops, one of which was at the University of Manchester, hosted by us at the SSI, we developed this roadmap and some of the solutions that are in it. It was a very collaborative process, so everyone contributed to it, but we did have a dedicated writer, Stuart Gillespie, who we are very grateful for. And there is the link there and a QR code for the full roadmap. And I encourage you to have a look at that roadmap because it is quite useful. And especially, it's also very interesting to have perspectives from people outside of the arts and humanities, RSEs there as well. So you don't necessarily have to be an RSE in the arts and humanities. It's very interesting also that outside perspective for some of the challenges, and maybe the challenges that we see in the arts and humanities RSEs might also be relevant to other areas. Now, the roadmap outlines a strategic plan to establish a national people-centered arts and humanity RSE capability, ensuring that digital expertise is accessible and sustainable within arts and humanities research. So the problem that it does here is, so on the one hand, there is not enough, there aren't enough RSEs with domain knowledge of the arts and humanities. And on the other hand, there are researchers who are trying to access those skills. And there is a gap between those two. There's a problem from both sides, how to do that. This roadmap is trying to find some solutions on how to resolve that. It tries to do that through different ways. One is a UK-wide directory and community of RSEs. And these then are RSEs with arts and humanities knowledge or specific arts and humanities training. They could also be RSEs who have a completely different background, but are very happy to work with researchers in the arts and humanities. So that's the idea. It also proposes a program of new and existing skills and training initiatives, and a matchmaking mechanism to facilitate collaboration. So this is a collaboration between RSEs and researchers, between researchers themselves, and look at their great case studies, and sort of sharing skills and resources across the UK and across the institutions. It also proposes an outreach and community building program to promote networking, open practice collaboration, and knowledge exchange that will be crucial for the capability's effectiveness. And furthermore, there is, but it's sort of longer term, is the hope as well that it includes an incubator to drive innovation in reusable research methods and tools, and this sort of seek-on funding kind of thing. It also proposes continuous monitoring and evaluation to ensure the capability's long-term success. In terms of outcomes of all these things, what it's trying to achieve? The expected outcomes of this capability include increased access to RSE expertise, so unlocking digital research opportunities in the arts and humanities, skills and career development for both researchers and RSEs, Because one of the things that in the roadmap was discussed often is sometimes in the arts and humanities, there might be people who are developing code who might not see themselves as RSEs, but also there aren't sufficient career pathways for those people to see RSE as a career path there. So there's a lot of missed opportunity of a lot of very passionate and skilled people who don't go into this RSE career or career path, and also don't identify with the RSE identity, this combination of skills gap or imposter syndrome or a combination of both. Then sustainable infrastructure, supporting long-term growth and innovation. And infrastructure here talks about sharing that infrastructure as well. It's just the scale of investments in the arts and humanities is quite different compared to other research councils and other disciplines. So there is a greater need for collaboration and sharing of resources and skills, and also training people up to actually use the infrastructure. Sometimes there can be a bit of focus on infrastructure as something that built and can be bought, but it's equally important to support the people who actually support that infrastructure and who actually train the researchers to use that infrastructure efficiently and effectively. The other thing that is trying to achieve by these things is a greater cross-disciplinary impact. As the arts and humanities, digital research methods and knowledge benefits STEM and other domains. So the roadmap is not trying to just focus on the arts and humanities, but it's also trying to raise or bring on a similar level the arts and humanities with the other disciplines, where it can engage in conversations on an equal level. So often I've seen in the development of new technologies and AI as well, the arts and humanities is not really part of the major conversations. Sometimes they're brought in to discuss the ethical bits of it or something, the more tricky, vague bits that everyone sees as sort of extra, but not as an essential conversation partner. So it is also elevating the arts and humanities, which has suffered from a sort of historical underinvestment in the sector, which means that the skills level and the resources are just not there in comparison to other fields. And it's today in all these technologies, it's very important the arts and humanities part of these conversations to make sure that the technologies that we develop really have a benefit to society, that the technologies we develop really work for us people, and the arts and humanities are very good at that. They're also very good at pointing their finger at things which break and can do differently and asking why. And one of the outcomes as well, this capability and roadmap is a more robustly interconnected ecosystem and community that is easier to navigate and collaborate within. The arts and humanities, the thing that makes it so great and makes it so difficult is it's hugely fragmented. It's very diverse. You've got researchers working on vastly different data sets, vastly different methods, disciplines, backgrounds, materials, resources. And that is tricky. So one of the things that we in the SSI and currently with this roadmap are doing as well is trying to sort of coordinate all the activities and everything that's going on within the arts and humanities and in this field. Now, I've talked enough for a little bit, so I was looking for a little bit of feedback, thoughts and feedback. So here is a QR code. You can go there. Links to a Mentimeter as well that I'll share in the chat. And there are two questions there. So the first one is a ranking of the things that the roadmap is trying to do. And it'd be interesting to see in the room and online, what do you think is the most important one? What do you think is relevant? And then there is another question of what is missing. So the second question there is a sort of word cloud of, are there things in that list that you see are missing, or what else could you put in there? I'll share that in the link in the chat. and then I'll show the results on the screen as well. Take a minute to fill that in, please. Right. We'll leave a second to add some more reactions. Okay, I think we have might be a few more votes coming in. Interesting. So a program of new and existing skills and training initiatives for hires, but yeah, just it was on equal level, but it just on it from an outreach and community building program forward to networking. Interesting. Monitoring. Yeah, I know this is not very flashy for the community, but it's important for the funders. So it is in there, but it's great. UK-wide directory, but there's a clear demand for skills and training initiatives. I think that's related to the sort of historical underinvestment in the arts and humanities sector. And I should say that sometimes in the arts and humanities, it's not called an investment in the arts and humanities. It's in other sciences it's called investments when they do it, but in the arts and humanities it's called costs or funds. But there is actually a return on investment in the arts and humanities. There's a massive potential for the digitization of heritage collections. Multiple studies have shown how many that would contribute to the GDP and how much that would be in return of investment. So it's also that kind of language which we in the arts and humanities don't really like to talk about. For the funders, this monitoring and evaluation and talking about return on investment is important when you come to funders to make that argument. Okay, thank you very much. Then there is a second question. So this ranking is useful. What gaps or opportunities do you see for arts and humanities RSEs locally, regionally, and nationally? Everyone's thinking very hard. Well, we covered everything. That's fine as well. I'd be surprised. Researcher awareness, I can read the first answer. Well, somebody else is coming in. If someone in the room would like to discuss it or raise any issues, feel free to do so. So I think there's I see a lot of connections as well, and networks and community building. That's still to be done in the arts and humanities. One thing for me is my personal bugbear is okay, that must be Mary in there. One of my personal bugbears is when we talk about arts and humanities and RSEs in that community it's often, and it's understandable that community building focuses on arts and humanities communities and that they're sort of their own different type of animals, very specific kind of RSE and very different than other RSEs. When actually what I'm hoping and what I'm really pushing for is for RSEs in the arts and humanities to be included as equals in RSE groups, included within the wider community of RSEs. So it might be a short-term, medium-term solution to first gather some RSEs or embedded RSEs or researchers who code within these smaller local, regional or national hubs even, or networks. But the ultimate goal for me is always integration into the wider RSE community, or wider RSE or digital research technical professionals, which is useful, broader term, because a lot of, like, for example, librarians and archivists, they wouldn't necessarily adopt the RSE identity, but they use a lot of code, they use a lot of data management, they've got a lot of skills that are very beneficial to some of the discussions that RSEs are having, including yesterday about green computing, about data management. I said, well, librarians and archivists constantly deal with data management, and archivists get email archives now that they have to sift through. So they're very equipped for that kind of thing. So that's my personal background, but I see a lot of networking that could be done. And then I would say the SSI is a great place to do that. We have the fellowship, and a lot of our fellows are focusing on community building in different ways. But I just wanted to say that it's a wider and a more broad interest of myself and the SSI. So if you have any ideas in this space and you're looking for some support, some advice, feedback on how to approach something like this, or other ways of supporting that, feel free to contact me. We're very happy to work with you in this space. Great. Then let me continue back to the presentation, but thank you for sharing your thoughts there. So taking all of this back, the roadmap, some of the activity of the SSI, I think it's sort of focused on three main pillars, three main sets of activities. And I hope that sort of resonates with other people. And I just want to briefly go through that before we finish up and go towards hopefully a more broader discussion about this. So the three things in which I think that covers this, and some of the work going forward, some of the work we've done, are community, capacity, and collaboration. Three main things: how we advance digital research in the arts and humanities. Thank you. Communities first. So communities, for the people online that were applauding next door, I'll take any applause. Communities building connections across the arts and humanities. So there it's important to, what for RSEs and what the SSI has really been pushing is recognition of RSEs as essential to digital research. Here specifically in the arts and humanities, but more broadly, I think that's really important, that that's the benefit of that, adopting that RSE identity, whether you want to take on the title or not. That's the thing we're pushing for. In the SSI, there's now the Hidden Breath Festival, there's ETI, to expand that for other job roles as well. That make sure that if people are recognized for the contribution they make to research, it helps their careers, it improves the research, and ultimately that leads to more innovative research and better quality research. So better software, better research. So within, and that was sort of what we've mentioned as well, many work in isolation or in mixed roles with academic departments, libraries or cultural institutions. That's unique to the arts and humanities. Within the sort of digital turn, within the development of technologies, it's become more and more important to work together. But within the arts and humanities, you still have that romantic role of the scholar on his desk hunched over with a little light and doing all the research by themselves, going away for years and then coming back and writing a book and then disappearing again. But today you work with other groups, you work in research groups, and that's more common in other areas, but it's starting to happen in the arts and humanities as well. And RSEs should and could be a part of those collaborations from the start. Not at the end when the researcher comes to the RSE and say, I want this, and then come back and then the researcher says, no, I want something else. But to have it as a proper collaborative process. Building networks helps share expertise, surface challenges, and coordinate best practices. That's again is sort of a collaboration of communities as well, the importance of communities. The SSI supports us through the fellowship program, which empowers individuals to become recognized as ambassadors of sustainable digital medicine, community building. And SSI fellows such as Godwin and Milena that we saw before are developing regional and thematic communities that connect arts and humanities RSEs and sustain collaboration beyond individual projects. So it is not only arts and humanities RSEs, but researchers as well. They come together in these thematic and regional networks. Then capacity, strengthening digital skills and RSE expertise. So we mentioned demand for RSEs with both technical and arts and humanities domain expertise continues to outstrip supply. And many researchers face barriers accessing training tools and technical support. So building capacity means developing sustainable development of sustainable pathways for skills development and recognition. That's a really untapped potential in the arts and humanities for researchers who code and who can be encouraged to go on that sort of RSE career path or more software development path track, which I did. I sort of, do it in the evenings. I did the full stack developer course, tried in my own time. I've now got a family, so that's impossible. That's another barrier there. But we want to have that more structured as part of the curriculum, as part of a recognized career path within the arts and humanities, to help get more RSEs there, who can go into other fields as well. So not stick to the arts and humanities, who can work on other projects as well. The SSI provides training, mentorship, resources, including recent software camps I mentioned, and contributions at the Digital Humanities Summer School. So the RSE Summer School, Digital Humanities Summer School, the SSI is this year actively collaborating with the University of Cambridge and the University and King's College and other organizations, University of Brighton. We're not quite sure where it will happen yet, but it is going to happen. But the SSI there is really trying to upskill both researchers and trying to encourage people in that sort of intermediate stage where they become proficient in writing a bit of code and think, is this maybe a career path for me? That's where the RSE Digital Humanities Summer School is sort of placed and encouraging people to go into that path and have a bit of recognition of the skills they have, because they often don't have formal training in coding or other things. So it's building that recognition, building that portfolio for them. And these efforts address both individual upskilling and institutional readiness for digital research. Their capacity is also about sharing skills and resources. And finally, collaboration, coordinating efforts across disciplines and institutions. So all of this is great. And I think within the community, there's a real drive and passion to work together, to upskill, to train, and to explore all these things together. However, institutional structures and funding models often make this difficult to sustain. So there's a lot of politics around this involved as well. And this is where the SSI policy and research team and working with the community team as well is really trying to push things forward. So that's the hidden breath work as well. It's the ETI work. It's where we try to change policy, where we try to change people's attitudes towards these things. So the SSI promotes collaboration through shared events and coordinating cross-sector collaborations, such as collaboration workshop and community-driven reports. And I should stress here, collaboration workshop is an event unlike RSECon, where it's mostly RSE. Collaboration workshop attracts a whole range of people from backgrounds. So funders, policymakers, data stewards, librarians, and a lot of RSEs, of course. But they're all working together to find these solutions and work through them. Now, the report towards the National RSE Capability, the Arts and Humanities, this highlights how coordination can strengthen long-term digital infrastructure. And that's sort of one point that we mentioned before as well. If you want to have excellent infrastructure, you need to support the people behind it. Sort of the central message of the fellowship program as well. You need to keep an eye on the people actually doing that work and recognize everyone who makes a contribution to that kind of work, because that will be in everyone's favor. It will improve career pathways, it will improve the research that might lead to. Then collaboration and sharing resources and skills is key to turning local innovation into collective capability. There's also a big environmental sustainable question mark there or point there that not every institutional research group needs to have their own infrastructure or computing infrastructure. We can share those resources and we can share the skills and expertise. And when we find out the politics around that, then I think that will definitely be a big win. But it is the direction that both funders and the government is moving in. So it's better to feed into how we see that happening in the best possible way. And then the Q&A. Some questions here. What do you think are low-hanging fruits you see for quick wins? What are very quick things that we can put in place? What unique challenges do you face when supporting Arts and Humanities projects compared to STEM disciplines? How could training or professional development be tailored to meet the needs of Arts and Humanities research, and what will make RSE roles more sustainable, attractive in the Arts and Humanities sector? And do you know any examples of long-term RSE and Arts and Humanities partnerships? Some of the questions I have, hopefully we get some answers. And then the final slide, how to get involved here. There's many ways you can get involved with the SSI. There's a website you can go to. We have resources, we have fellowship programs, we have training. We have a blog that is read by a lot of people. I think we had over 1 million visitors or something. So subscribe to the newsletter, look at the blog, and if you have any blogs you want to submit, they can be on there. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Super. Thank you so much, Oscar. And I will confirm that the collaborations workshop is a really fun event and lots of interesting stuff. And also, if anyone does have any ideas for blog posts, do submit them to the SSI or look for other people who want to join writing. So I guess if there's any questions online, if people want to stick their hands up or write them in the chat, and I'll also go through the room. And I guess if you can flick back to your questions for us, perhaps there were some comments on there. And I was going to start by asking, I guess, the SSI supported the original formation of RSE communities, and it sounds like a lot of the problems or of the challenges here are the same. So do you have a feeling for why, of the kind of the obvious things you mentioned, why the arts and humanities sort of got left behind a bit in that initial rush? Or are there also some things you're going to look at doing differently this time?
Yeah, I think what I sort of alluded to it earlier. I think in the arts and humanities there was sort of a lack of investment, which meant that the skills weren't, or people couldn't access or career pathways or access to training that would make them feel like they're an equal partner in that conversation of RSEs. So I think initially there was a lot of imposter syndrome and things like RSE and software engineer. That's not really what we do. I also think within the arts and humanities for a long time, a lot of what arts and humanities researchers, including myself, did was using sort of tools rather than actually writing the code. And that to a high level, they were using that. But for example, I've used a lot of hand text recognition. I've used a lot of sort of network analysis, 3D modeling, but all of that didn't involve coding. So I was using those tools in a very, not very, but in a good way. But so I never felt like a coder until I sort of, I had an Excel sheet and then I had to build a database and then I had to build a page for ingesting the data and a database model and all those kind of things. And that was really coding what I was doing. Then I felt, okay, I'm doing coding and maybe I need to do some sort of training in how to code properly, but it's all self-taught. And I think that's that point where you then start to actually code. And that's where I can see now some of in the arts and humanities, the community has moved on from going to research IT and say, I want a website because I made something and I need a website to put it on for my funder. They're actively using algorithms, they're actively using code and databases to scale the questions they have, and also sometimes to ask fundamentally different questions. But I think the field took a bit longer because of political reasons, because they were more conservative in adopting those technologies. But I think they are there now, and certainly some of the projects that I've seen in the last 5 years, or five to 10 years in the arts and humanities, have really used computational methods in a very, very efficient way. Samantha Anhert and others from there's some really great work, which is on par with sort of computational approaches.
There's a question from Nick online, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Thank you for your talk. I'm a research software engineer in the Digital Humanities at Sussex. I'm an embedded research software engineer and the only research software engineer in this particular part of the department research group. And I find the thing I end up doing a lot more, and the thing that creates the most value for my research area, is usually sizing projects and determining what the best approach, technology, and labor power is required to do the job, and then finding somebody who can do it. Because that's a way of multiplying my effort rather than jumping on every project in which my time would be immediately eaten up, right?
Yeah.
So there's two things that spring to mind based on what you've been talking about. So this register of RSEs, which came reasonably low on the list of people's priorities and right at the top for mine, because of this exact reason. Like, how does that work? I mean, it's kind of a broadly, it sounds like a great idea, but in terms of the way that RSE roles are usually funded, I don't understand how that works. Like, what is a community RSE, and how can their availability be made adaptable without actually making their jobs precarious, if you see what I mean? Like saying, oh, we're relying on this person not having their time paid for, and therefore we get their time so we get them on board by actually paying them, you know? And then the second question is about infrastructure and what that really means. You've referred to infrastructure, providing infrastructure for RSEs and for people, but I didn't quite catch what that actually means. Do you mean like HPC? Do you mean like cloud resources? What do you really mean with this infrastructure thing? And then the last point to make, sorry for so many points. Exactly the work that I'm doing here, I think, you know, if you're talking about low-hanging fruit, I think providing resources for PIs and maybe, you know, the people who are looking at funding bids, to give them a sense for what is good software in that circumstance, giving them a target for good software in their particular research project is, and then giving them information about how you would go about that, what kind of engineer, what kind of resource they need to fulfill that, because these are very stratified goals. You can have a deployment for delivery that's actually, used by customers and things like that. That's a very different thing from a piece of a script that can process some software and process some data, and you can share in a public repository, right? They're very different requirements. And just a low-hanging fruit is just like mapping that space out for PIs so that they maybe don't need as many RSE people spending their time doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there is a note from Marion to say some of this sort of thing exists a little bit within DIRAC for materials and HPC. Unfortunately, our two DIRAC members have just had to go to a DIRAC meeting. And I'd also say if you look at the Netherlands, the eScience Centre there has sort of this national resource that can be looked at.
So I'll go maybe in reverse order. The last point about sort of PIs, I think what's really important there, what we're trying to change in arts and humanities and with researchers, is to evolve RSEs from the conception of a project. So before you apply to a funder, talk to an RSE, what do you need and what your plans are, and cost that in properly. Because often in practice, what usually happens is the Arts and Humanities scholar goes out, gets some funding, and then shows up to an RSE or an RSE group with a pot of money and say, I've got this pot of money and I promise this. And yeah, no, that is not a great way of doing it. And then sometimes that money's just handed over and say, well, I'll see you in 6 months. So that is really, I think, a behavior, something that we want to change. And that's maybe on a university level, when people are putting in funding bids, you go to the research office, then the research office should sort of turn around and say, have you properly costed? Have you talked to research IT? Have you talked to RSEs about the effort that you've costed in, and that it is a realistic amount? And I think that will make a world of difference, because the RSEs will have that knowledge, yeah, that will make a big difference for that. The mapping out of space and information, I think, is also very, very useful, of course. In terms of infrastructure, I think what I meant there is sharing infrastructure and sharing skills. And that's sort of also in relation to your first question about the registry. So what capability in blue sky thinking, what our big plan and proposal was, is that with this national capability of RSEs, that this capability, which is sort of a national capability, buys out some of RSE's time and guarantees that. Because often when you say, you know, RSEs in the Arts and Humanities, they are on precarious contracts, so they're not usually hired on a permanent basis. So what the capability proposed is that this national capability says, if you hire an RSE in the Arts and Humanities, we guarantee that they will be busy for 20% or 50% of their time. So we guarantee that, that they'll always have something to do. And that's coordinated those efforts across the UK. But if there's not enough work, then we still guarantee that. So that is really a very difficult political thing to figure out with all the institutions, how to work that out. So it is something that we think like a blue sky thinking, that we are sort of aiming for, but yeah, it will need a lot of talking and a lot of figuring out the details of that. But that's sort of what we hope with the registry, and that you have a central pool of RSEs with Arts and Humanities knowledge. Some of them are already employed at the university, some of them are embedded. So it's bringing those and highlighting those people, showing those people who are sometimes completely disconnected from the RSE community, but also encouraging more hiring in that field and more permanent contracts in that field, so they can build their careers, they can build projects, they can build expertise for them. Does that answer your question, Nick?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm conscious of the time and that we are now at 2 o'clock. So I think I'll wrap up there, but Oscar is sort of visiting and will be coming back with us. So if anyone here would like to chat about any of these things further, please do come along afterwards. And with that, just thank Oscar once again. Thank you very much.